Joining us now is CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane. Scott, it's always good to see you. Now, both former President Trump and the Justice Department have been submitting a series of filings related to this Mar-a-Lago case. What do we know about what happened today, about this call, and what is the beef that Judge Dearie is looking for?
Yeah, you can hear the frustration in the judge's voice. He's in an unenviable position here. He has work he has to do. He has a deadline. He's just not sure how much work he has to do. Imagine being assigned a paper in college for a final and being told it's due around Thanksgiving, but not being told whether it's 3 pages or 3,000 pages in length. That's what the judge is dealing with. He's been assigned this task by a federal judge in Florida to navigate this dispute between the Justice Department and Trump's lawyers over those records seized August 8th. There is disagreement over some of those records. Judge Dearie has to adjudicate or referee as the special master, but the two parties can't agree on how many pages they disagree about. So it's out there. It's an ongoing dispute, and the judge wants them to figure it out so he can get to work and get this done. I'll note, revealed today in court, there are about 21,000 pages of records seized. That's far less than was initially estimated, about 1/10 the amount initially estimated. So the judge has some of 21,000 pages to referee here.
Well, I loved your analogy. It made sense to me about the deadline and not knowing how long the assignment actually is. Remind our viewers, what is the deadline for the special master's review? And given that there's still so many questions, does it look like it's going to be possible to complete it by that time?
This could all be moot. I'm glad you asked that, because the Justice Department has appealed all this to the Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta, asking that the court knock down this special master thing to begin with. If they don't think they should go through this step, it's gumming up the works, it's consuming time, and they say it's irrelevant, that the papers belong to the U.S. government, not to the former president, no matter what the arguments may be. But there are deadlines coming. Judge Dearie has set his own deadline to both parties, trying to get them moving within 3 or 4 weeks. The judge who put this on Judge Dearie, the federal judge Eileen Cannon, has a December deadline. So those deadlines are approaching. But this special master was knocked down a peg in terms of importance when the Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that those classified records that were pulled out can continue to be reviewed by the Justice Department, that their investigation can continue in the meantime. But this is nevertheless a legal hurdle for the Justice Department, and something the Trump team is hooked onto and will remain hooked onto in the near future.
Now, Scott, I want to move to a different deadline, perhaps if there is a deadline. The January 6th committee voted last week to subpoena former President Trump. When will this subpoena be formally issued? And how do we expect the former president to respond? Does he have to really, follow through?
Well, on Friday, a committee member told us that that subpoena would be issued to the former president, in her words, promptly. Promptly did not mean within 72 hours, because here we are and it still hasn't been issued, and it looks unlikely today. So our best estimate is tomorrow at the earliest. It does take time. They got to put it on paper. They've got to perfect the language. They have to send it to the former president, and likely with deadlines baked into the subpoena itself. This does consume time. Whether the former president chooses to respond is anybody's guess, though nobody here is expecting him to firmly. It also may be moot, because as time is being consumed on the process, the clock is ticking loudly for this January 6th committee like a pumpkin at midnight, or I think they return to a pumpkin at midnight. They expire at the end of the calendar year. Pardon me for not getting the Cinderella metaphor correct. My kids would be upset with me. But their clock is ticking loudly. They've got to get work done by the end of December, and they're getting pretty darn close, and they have to get that subpoena out the door still.
Good analogies, though, Scott. Don't beat yourself up over that.
Finals upon finals. I think the paper one really resonated over here. Anyway, thank you, Scott.